Looking for a bank you can trust? Look no further than Home Trust Bank, the premier banking service provider of our region and dedicated sponsor of Talking Ship.
Jeff, did you know that for nearly 100 years, Home Trust Bank has been building relationships with customers based on integrity and trust? Whether you need an account, investment help, or a home or business loan, they've got you covered.
I did. I actually refinanced my house with Home Trust. Headquartered in Asheville, Home Trust employs people who live in our neighborhoods and care deeply about our community. Greetings, shipheads, and welcome to Talkin' Ship, the Venture Asheville podcast where we talk about issues and topics in entrepreneurship. If you are looking for our sister podcast on podcasting tips, that's our other show, Anchored in Conversation. Get it? Yeah, that's all right.
Got it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
It's okay.
That one was from ChatGPT. I couldn't come up with a pun in time for this episode. We are the Venture Asheville team. Venture Asheville is the high-growth entrepreneurship initiative of the Economic Development Coalition for Asheville-Buncombe County. We build entrepreneurs and get startups funded. I'm Jeffrey Kaplan, this ship's captain, director of Venture Asheville, and lover of powdered drinks. So in the last episode, I mentioned I accidentally ordered a matcha when I meant to say chai. And what we have here in the break room is a powdered chai mix. You can just scoop out the chai from the can and then drop hot water in and stir it up. And now I have my chai latte. And Desiree, our executive operations manager, she drinks a powdered ready-to-drink coffee, like instant coffee, that's amped up with protein powder. So she drinks protein coffee, all in a powder. Not a new technology, obviously, this dehydration, or I don't know what you would call that, the powderification of products. There's actually a machine at AB Tech in their test kitchen that you can give them anything and they will turn it into a powder. So let's say you walk in with a barrel of cucumbers, they'll turn it into a powder and you can make cucumber scented eye cream, for example.
Huh. I guess I could do that with a dehydrator at home too, right?
Daughter Jennifer just sent me a text about a bagel, a frozen bagel that's got 25 grams of protein and only 5 grams of carbs.
Come on.
Come on. Give me a boatload of those.
Yeah. Invert the formula.
What do they taste like?
I hope it tastes like a bagel. It tastes like a burger. Well, with me as always, you heard from our guest Gary Wald. He'll get his full intro in just a moment. But Gary, way to jump in the intro, man. That's awesome. We love that. With me as always is the wonderful, smart, talented, considerate, and creative Juliana Moon Walker, our master of interactive media. Moon Walker, we're in these 2-a-days lately. How you feeling about recording 2 podcasts a day?
I know. I'm feeling very social today. I feel like I've done a lot of talk. It's one of those days where I do a lot of talking and not a lot of like working. I have a lot of work to do, but I'm happy to be here. I'm always happy to do the 2-a-days.
Did I ever tell you what my son says when he's only 3.5? We ask him, what does mommy do? My wife's a veterinarian. He says mommy plays with puppies and kittens. We ask him, what does daddy do? He says daddy talks a lot. So welcome to my world, Jay.
Yep, you do. Cheers to that, though.
Hey, it's a tough job. Somebody's got to do it.
Somebody's got to do it.
Juliana, very few people ever get to be a real first mover in a market. Even less of that small group of people get to be a category king. A category king is a product or business that builds an entirely new category, as the name says. It's like things that become eponymous with the market or the industry. All right, so a really good example is Bird's Eye Food, right? Bird's Eye created the frozen food section, which is a multi-billion-dollar market. Another one is Apple computers. Like Apple invented the PC, the personal computer, right? That became eponymous with that space. Even tablets, right? How many tablets do you just call an iPad?
Yeah, seriously.
Right, so the iPad is the category king. With us today is somebody I met a year and a half, 2 years ago, I think. And the first time I met this person, I was like, they will be an amazing guest on our show one day. His name is Gary Wald, and he has helped create not one, but two categories in his career. And it spans decades, it spans technologies, it spans markets and industries. We are so lucky to have Gary Wald with us. He played a critical role in the Transformers phenomenon at Hasbro. And he also co-founded TeleDoc and transformed, got to use that one again, how the world receives healthcare through telemedicine. Let's see if there's more than meets the eye to our guest, Gary Wald. Juliana, that's a Transformers joke. You probably get they're probably too young for that one. Gary, thank you for being here and talking ship with us.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here. And you're bringing up some old memories, and I actually jotted down some notes because my memory's not that good. So I want to, where people need to be acknowledged, I want to make sure I mention them.
We have a very vigorous, rigorous, difficult fact-checking department here at Talking Ship. So they will be scouring your comments for accuracy as Jay Walker thumbs up from over there. All right, Gary, I want to cover a lot with you today because you have just an amazing background. You've been part of just major cultural touchstones for, I think, everybody in the country. Before you even knew what a transformer was, tell us, where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? How'd you start in that field?
Well, and I think as you hear the story, you'll realize that my career has been a sum of the parts, and that experiences became building blocks for challenges later in my career. And so, no one event is more important than others, although you've mentioned a couple that certainly stand out, but it's the whole. And
Gary, I just do that for the clickbait because people are going to see Transformers and TeleDoc on the episode title.
Right.
That's what they're going to click on. It's clickbait.
It's branding. I grew up in Highland Park, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago. I did my undergrad at the University of Wisconsin. And got an MBA from Northwestern in Chicago. In my undergrad, I thought I was going to be an aeronautical engineer. I was good in science and math, but quickly migrated to marketing and advertising because of some.
What drew you out of engineering into that side of the business?
Well, in truth, all the engineering classes were at 7 in the morning in Madison when it was 20 below zero.
Yeah.
And there were some high profile people in Madison who were teaching classes that just sucked me in, and I got
cool.
Right. And I started my career at a small ad agency in Chicago, where I learned media planning and buying, and I was working on the Jim Beam account.
Oh, really?
Also, where I learned how to enjoy bourbon.
Yeah.
Price. And that led to a great beginning in the ad agency business, which is where I thought my future would be. And it led to Ogilvy and Mather, who was one of the top 5 largest and most prestigious agencies, recruiting me to go out to Los Angeles to work on the Mattel toy account. And I was responsible for the boys' toys group. And those were things like Hot Wheels and Big Jim and those kinds of boys' toys. And it was really an exercise in learning strategy, advertising strategy, and learning commercial production, because each year, though each toy would have its own commercial, and they would all be made between the months of October and December, so they could be presented at the February Toy Fair in New York. And the retailers would come look at the commercial and decide how big an order they wanted to place based on how good they thought the advertising was. And so they were always being criticized, and the market then became the true barometer of how good or good it wasn't. So that was my introduction into the world of toys. And it obviously served me well because toys came into my career later in life. But in between there, as a young person in the ad agency business, the word packaged goods and having a packaged goods experience was critical for your resume. And Ogilvy was kind enough to then move me to New York to work on a children's oriented business from Nabisco, and it was cookies and crackers, and that turned out to be both good news and bad news for my career, because 3 months into that experience, Nabisco fired the agency and said, this work you're doing for us isn't working, so we're going elsewhere. And I said, woe is me. And the good news, the good news is, literally within a week, they said, well, Unilever, who's a big client of ours, is introducing a new toothpaste brand called AIM, which is geared to moms and kids. And it was the first gel toothpaste that contained fluoride.
Oh, so okay. Which is now standard, right? That's pretty standard now.
That was the first. And we then marketed it both to kids and to moms. And it became the number 3 selling toothpaste behind Crest.
Whoa.
Okay. So that became a big success. And so we now leave children's, and all through the time of working on kids and children's oriented advertising. And it was controversial, because if you remember the days, there was groups who thought that advertising to children ought to be banned, and because we're just seeding them with things they don't need, and some of that. And in fact, if you did an analysis on the economics of it, there would be no children's television programming if there wasn't children's television advertising.
Right. Well, can you not to like throw an age or but can you put a timeline for us here? So I'm just picturing it's like Mad Men, that era of advertising.
Yeah,
when you're in New York,
and then a couple years later than that. So then Ogilvy was 1973 for me.
Yeah.
Okay. And Peggy Sharon was the person advocating, the banning of that, and so a lot of.
But this is when, like, when I grew up, for example, there was no cigarette commercials on TV, like still certainly print ads.
Right.
But that was a turning point where you decided to say, hey, we got to stop advertising these. Like, and I don't know if people, like, not to pick on Juliana, the youngest one on the call, realizes that, like, there was a time when you would see a Marlboro man on TV telling you about the great taste and great flavor, or, that it's recommended by their doctor, right? Like that. So that I think that's probably part of the conversation that Gary's talking about is regulation around TV communication.
And the regulatory environment influences a lot of the things that I've touched on. We'll talk about that when it comes to health medicine for sure. Right? So getting the opportunity to work with Unilever, who was an important client for Ogilvy, was important. AIM became a success, and then they added to my responsibilities and gave me this huge challenge, very different than children's, called Dove soap. Okay.
They figured you could do toothpaste, you can do soap.
Well, that's right. It's the same division.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And Health and Beauty Aids was the name of the Unilever division at that time. And at that time, Dove had been around a long time, and it was Dove with 1/4 cleansing cream. That was the messaging. And it was used by older women to take makeup off. But the franchise was dying. And Unilever said, we need to find a way to instill younger users into this franchise. And my methodology is always to ask more questions and delve and probe, because out of that comes a strategy. And so I went and spent a day with the scientists at Unilever. And I asked a battery of questions, which did lead to a successful strategy. So I said, okay, tell me about this thing. What is it? Well, it's a synthetic detergent that was developed during the war to treat burn patients. So it's very gentle to the skin, yet very efficacious in fighting germs. I said, well, I don't think there's a good advertising message there. Okay. So what's in it? Well, the number 1 ingredient is stearic acid. Oh, that sounds very but what else is stearic acid used for? Well, it's the number 1 ingredient in moisturizing cream. Oh, so my brain starts working, and I then said to the clients and the clients' lawyers, could we say Dove with 1/4 moisturizing cream?
Yeah.
After a lot of consternation and long months of deliberation, because that was not their heritage, they agreed to go forward, and the whole business just erupted. They grew the business 16%, or about $60 million in 1 year, when they changed the whole advertising message to talk about moisturizing cream, because that was what in those days everyone was worried about: skincare, right? More than just cleaning. So that became that was a big success for me. It shows you how you got to dig, you got to look for the right opportunity.
But there's some inherent talent there, right? You clearly have a talent for aphasia, which is the phenomenon of seeing patterns where others don't. Right. You're connecting dots when other people have not even made that cognitive leap yet.
Right. And that's the strategic. That's what I'm good at. Sure, you're right.
So how do you go from soap to the best-selling toy of all time?
Well,
and I don't know if that's true. It just sounds like it would be true. I'll be honest. Well, the fact checkers, Juliana will Wikipedia me.
1985, I was hired by Griffin Bacall. Griffin Bacall was a medium-sized agency that ultimately was acquired by Bozell and Jacobs. And two principals, Tom Griffin and Joe Bacall, were just brilliant, creative guys. And they had worked on the Hasbro business a long time. And they hired me to run the boys' toy part of that business. And the role of the agency would not only be to market existing products, but they would show us concepts and ideas that they were thinking about, and see, could we turn it into a meaningful marketing opportunity? And so we brought a team of people up to Pawtucket, Rhode Island, where Hasbro was broached one day, and they showed us a toy called Diaclon. Diaclon was made by Takara, a Japanese toy company. And they had actually created the first concept of robots that changed form and figure. Okay?
And so to break it down, so Hasbro brings in a Japanese company with a prototype or concept.
Oh, no, the Diaclons were already being marketed in the United States and failing miserably.
Oh, okay.
And Hasbro says, gee, this is a good idea. Let's see what we could use our creativity and our marketing muscle. What could we do with it? And so they asked us, the agency, come back to us in 2 months with the answers to that question.
Cool.
And we created a strategy that, so I was leading then a team of brilliant people. I get a little credit, but these guys, the creative geniuses who sit at their desk and come up with ideas are just unbelievable. And I was lucky to have a few of them working with me. And so we came up with a strategy to rename this product Transformers, to create the whole backstory of Autobots versus Decepticons. So when I say create, these are the creative guys who came up with this.
Yeah. So was there inspiration? Was it like they're rehashing some old Shakespeare stuff? They just like the classic good versus evil? I mean, where do they draw inspiration?
Because I was the marketing guy, I was the suit, as they would say, to call me. They wouldn't tell me any of that. Where did inspiration come from? So I don't know, but it all seemed to work, and they would have storylines. Good guys, bad guys, the planets were being destroyed, they had to come to Earth for resources, all that kind of stuff. And and we then reached out to Marvel. And at the time, Marvel was known for comic books, but in the back of their game plan was the idea of TV and movies. And there was the very, very fledgling stage of that.
Wow.
And we agreed. So we've said, would you do a Transformers comic book? And the answer became yes. And we said, well, could we partner? The agency had a production company that did a lot of the production for commercials called Sunbow Productions. And said, could Sunbow and Marvel co-produce an animated television series And the answer was yes. So in the plan to Hasbro, let's do a 65 half-hour animated series.
Wow.
And what was key about that is we were not going to go for a Saturday morning experience. We were going for an afternoon after school, 5 days a week experience in first run syndication. Because we knew that if we're going to sell a product that becomes a collectible, that the children need to have in their hands to recreate what they've seen in the television series, it needs to happen multiple times. And so that, and we then bring that program, that recommendation to Hasbro, and they bought the whole program. They bought.
I mean, that seems like a huge leap, and it's amazing, right? To say, here's a poorly selling product. It's not being marketed right. It's not being positioned right. Come back in 2 months, and you say, not only are we giving them a storyline, not only are we changing the paint and what it looks like on the exterior, we're gonna make 65 TV shows for kids. So we got to get it on a network. We got to buy the time.
It was the first of its kind.
Yeah, now, it's a huge leap.
He-Man followed. He-Man was,
and then G.I. Joe.
Right. And then G.I. Joe from Hasbro followed that. And put it into first run syndication and do it. Now, we also said to the client, do not put any of the product on the retail shelves until the animated series is running and the kids have a chance to fall in love with the character.
I mean, so like you got to think, if I'm the exec at Hasbro, I'm like, you want me to sit on this inventory and not sell it?
Right.
And you go back to your story about the sales cycle of toys. You produce October to December. You order in February to sell for the next holiday season. So you're asking, this is a huge ask again, to say, don't sell it yet. Just sit on it.
That's right. Well, and when it became successful and inventory was running shy and retailers are saying, I need more, I need more, I need more. There wasn't any more because
that makes it collectible and more valuable, all the things.
You built quotas and you made so many of them. And so what would happen is we'd go to the client and say, the client would say to us, this was Hasbro, would say, I know we're out of inventory, but I want you to double the advertising budget.
Yes.
Double the advertising budget. So it's
great.
So more kids will want them and they can't get them. And you know that phenomenon. If you
value. Sure. Right. Amazing.
Right.
So did you ever think Transformers would go on for an additional, so from what, 85? Is that what you said?
No, but I'm one very critical component, and you started this conversation with More Than Meets the Eye. It was really wonderful advertising that was marketing the toy in addition to the program. If you remember, it was robots in disguise, More Than Meets the Eye, right? And so that became, and kids would walk around and art robots in disguise and do all kinds of funny voices with it, because we did do funny voices. And there was a Gestalt piece of the success. And the Gestalt piece of the success was adults could not transform them easily.
Right.
Their hand and eye coordination didn't know that
right.
And they certainly couldn't do it as fast as the kids could do it. So this was part of, I'm smarter than you are, Dad. Look what I can do, and that kind of stuff. And that's what also made it a big success.
Am I remembering the story? Did you once tell me that when they first came out, some of them were really even like too hard for people to do, and they had to make them easier?
No, I don't.
Now I'm making that up. All right, I'll strike that from the podcast.
Maybe that was your life experience.
So this starts in the 80s,
right?
And it's 2023, and there are still Transformers being made. There's still animated series. There's still products on the shelf. My friend's kid came to school in an Optimus Prime costume on Halloween, and we're still getting movies, like major blockbuster movies. Did you ever think it was going to be this big?
No. But when it's a creative-driven concept, we kept waiting for the day when we could build a float for the Macy's Day Parade.
Yeah.
that would transform on
Of
TV,
course.
you know, and the
Uh-huh.
technology was never there. We were too early. But I don't know if you know, today you can buy a $700 Optimus Prime that actually transforms electronically on voice command.
Ooh, I am a little under budget this year, so
Okay,
if I can, Gary, if I get one, will you sign it?
absolutely.
All
But
right.
I think so. In those days, sales grew to $600 million and 300 licenses to license
Uh-huh.
Transformers merchandise. And the TV show, I was asked to go lead the marketing distribution of the TV show to other countries around the world. In its heyday, Transformers was on air in 62 countries around the world,
Oh
and
my
that became the
God.
catalyst for toy sales for
Yeah,
Hasbro. Okay, get the TV
amazing.
show on. I mean, the formula was there. Get the TV show on,
Yeah.
and wait for 6 months, and then put some toys on the shelf, and it worked.
And we
So-
see that, of course, Star Wars, right? Anything Star Wars, every series, there's tons of merch. Star Trek as well. So going back to when you were a kid, were you into collectibles? Were you into this, like, the toy thing?
No. I was always outdoors playing baseball.
Yeah. Awesome. So how long were you with that firm? And I guess, your next,
Well, so what
I
happened
feel like
then?
your next big hit,
I
I'm going to
came
say, is TeleDoc. I know it's going to be wrong. I know there's more things in between Transformers and TeleDoc.
because I then led this international distribution arm, I got recognized in the international television marketplace, and NBC hired me to come run the international division of NBC,
No
basically
way.
licensing programs and technologies to countries around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that was fun for a while, but it was too much travel, and
What's your favorite country to visit?
Well, Germany is a lot of fun. It's a beautiful country. I hadn't gotten to New Zealand until recently, and now New Zealand is certainly my favorite place. Right, it's great.
Cool. So how do you go from that to TeleDoc?
I had been recruited by GTE to move from New York to Dallas, where GTE was headquarters, and GTE was a rural telephone company.
Does GTE become Verizon? Am I thinking this?
GTE merged with Bell Atlantic to create Verizon.
Yeah. Okay.
And I was brought there as VP of Business Development for Interactive Technologies. So it was the early days of ISP, the early days of e-commerce. And I did that for 5 years. And then they moved headquarters to New York, and we decided to stay. And I had a 1-year experience getting into the medical field, working as VP of marketing for Medtronic's insulin pump division. And I was commuting from Dallas to Los Angeles. And that was dreary, and that was just too hard to do. And then, and then they wanted me to move full time to Southern California, and my wife and I said, this is not for us. And lucky for me, I got introduced to Michael Gorton. And so opportunistic, because if I hadn't made that introduction, I'd probably be in Los Angeles. Who knows where Michael would have gone? And
Michael, you wouldn't be on our show.
That's right.
You wouldn't be on Talking Ship. Yeah.
And Michael tells me about this concept they have to build a telemedicine company. And Michael Gorton is brilliant. He's a serial entrepreneur. He has I wrote this down. He has a bachelor's degree in, he has a bachelor's degree in engineering, a master's degree in space physics, and a JD law degree.
Come on.
Okay. And
some guys have all the luck, it's not fair.
And my background complemented his, because I had marketing, business development, I had a little bit of device experience. And so he asked me to join the team. I became the third employee. he and two doctor friends. One was a relative and one was a friend. Dr. Bruce Beja and Dr. Byron Brooks were the three who were going to launch this. And now, just a little background: telemedicine had been around since the 50s. Okay, the FDA actually approved the use of visual communication tools for medical services in 1955. And the definition of telemedicine is using technology to deliver medical services to point of need. Okay? And the military had been using telemedicine to treat patients in the field who were injured. And the godfather of telemedicine is Dr. Jay Sanders. He was for many years the president of the American Telemedicine Association, but back in the early, I guess it was in the 90s, he did a 60 hospital telemedicine network where they could exchange information about patients with video and audio. And that had been done before. And then Dr. Brooks had done some early work with in the prison, in the incarcerated prisoners in the prison systems who weren't getting medical care. And it was very difficult to take a prisoner.
Really smart use cases, all these different verticals.
Out of a cell, it was two guards would have to take them somewhere. So of course, telemedicine in there and do that. So I was hired to be EVP of marketing and business development and sales for them. And the challenges were many. The business case was, we can save patients money, because right now a great many patients are going to the emergency room for every problem they have. And
we still hear that today, right? We still hear a lot of that criticism. And
the data seem to show that 40 to 45% of the patients who go to an ER don't need to be treated by an ER if they could see a physician or get access to a physician.
Right.
And back then, the average cost of a ER visit was about $950. So somebody was paying that. Your insurance company was paying that if you were insured. If you were a self-insured corporation, it was coming out of your bottom line.
Yeah.
Or if you were a patient and a self-pay, you were paying it. Versus a $35 telemedicine consult with TeleDoc. So that was, and not only that, but we could get you access to the doctor sooner than if you spend 2 and 3 hours sitting in the emergency room. So that was the business case. The challenges were regulatory. Not all states, the state medical boards saw this as newfangled, and we're not sure we believe in it, and we're not sure we're going to grant your doctor a license to practice telemedicine. In fact, it got so heated in Texas that TeleDoc actually had to sue as anti-competitive the state medical board, and won that case in court, and so the law was changed there.
It's an example of people's such resistance to change.
Well, they didn't. They thought their doctors would lose market share. Okay, now
in fact, they could increase their productivity, right?
The current law prohibits practicing medicine across state lines. So you're still dealing with doctors in Texas, but who might steal market share from a doctor down the street who became your regular provider, but he was not accessible. So I'll use the TeleDoc system and I'll get care right now. So that was one barrier. Another barrier was recruiting doctors. Okay, so you want me to come work for you. Well, how often are you going to work for me? What are you going to pay me? There was a little bit of chicken and egg, because I analogize this to how many checkout counters need to be open at the grocery store at various times of day.
Right. Well, how many shoppers are trying to check out?
How many shoppers are trying to push through, right? Well, how many consults will I have by season, month, by time of day? You know, are people going to call only after work hours because they're home and they feel like crap? You know, so we said to doctors, why don't you do this when you can? So you've got an office hours, fine. You're seeing patients, fine. I put a patient puts a request in, we guarantee someone will call them back within 5 minutes. Step out of your office and take the TeleDoc call. And so they did. and then started to build. And now we had to do it in all 50 states because you could only treat patients in your state.
So you had a huge network to build out.
And how many do I need
huge
in
advertising,
California?
marketing?
How many do I need in
right.
Oregon? Right.
Oh, wow.
So this was the juggling that was.
And this is like before push notifications and smartphones. So it's not like I'm a doctor. I'm like, bzz, bzz, oh, I got to go outside real quick.
Right.
Yeah.
This was, and you're using it. So TeleDoc had its own electronic medical record. They had built their own.
Mm-hmm.
So they needed you to complete that before the doctor would consult with you. So this was on a computer. Send the information, tell us about your prior medical history, a little bit about your current chronic diseases, what have you, and then the doctor will diagnose.
So I want to ask you to talk about the inflection point in this business. You told me this story. I think I've heard it once or twice, and you're going to tell it again at our Entrepreneur Resilience Summit to 100 other entrepreneurs. But you had kind of a slow momentum until you got connected to a reseller.
Right.
And so you had this incredible story of preparation being luck meeting opportunity, or sorry, luck being preparation meeting opportunity.
Correct.
If you could tell us this moment where things just
selling the
blow
concept.
open.
Selling the concept. I made the executive decision that this needs to be told with public relations. This competitive advantage story needs to be told with public relations. Get it into print. Get interviews.
Because you're changing opinions, a new to the world idea, essentially, for most people.
Correct. And then go to the medical conventions and have a booth where people, you're the one I read about in
Cool.
Wall Street Journal or what have you. And we worked with a PR company out of New Jersey called CPR, a Public Relations Committee, and they got us stories everywhere because this was new. This was very different challenge to the existing protocol. But even though we had a couple of successful use cases and proof of concepts going on, couldn't get the big sale. Couldn't get, and when you're a startup, everybody's selling. So and I got lucky. I reached out to a company called New Benefits, and New Benefits is based in Dallas, founded in 1990. They are the largest aggregator of discount benefits. Some medical, some financial, some travel, whatever. And they would sell those to associations, TPAs, corporations, insurance companies, and on a wholesale basis. And I was lucky enough to get an appointment with Joel Ray, the CEO of the company. And I show up to his office that morning. I think it's a 9:30 appointment. And this admin comes out and says to me, Mr. Wald, I don't know. He really feels terrible. He's got this bad, horrible, and he's probably going to cancel the meeting.
Yeah.
And then I hear him say from the office, "Okay, come on, I'll spend a few minutes with him." So I walk in, I introduce myself. I've not met this man before, and I said, "I understand you're feeling poorly." And he says, "Yes, I've got to call into my doctor, but he hasn't called me back yet." Oh, I said, "Tell you what, here's a telephone. Here, go to this website, register your name as a potential patient, make a call, and I guarantee you within 5 minutes of you calling in, a doctor will call you back. And I'm going to leave now. I'm not going to sell you anything. I'm going to leave now. I'm going to call you back in 3 hours and tell me how it went."
Yeah.
And I call him back in 3 hours and he says, "Let's come and have another meeting and talk about a contract." What happened? He said, "Well, the doctor called me back in 5 minutes. He did a diagnosis. He said, here's what I think you have. And I think you need a prescription." And you showed me in your medical record that you're Walgreens down the street. So I phoned it in. It'll be ready for you in a few minutes. Go pick it up. And then about an hour later, my regular doctor called me back. Said exactly the same thing. Here's what I think you have. And here's the medicine I think you have. And so that's proof of concept. Let's do this. You guys, it works. And so that really got us launched. And then we started telling people New Benefits, and they're now, so they have salespeople out selling to corporations and TPAs. And the minute they start selling it, it gets out, and the whole thing then started to snowball.
So, I mean, we talk about luck being preparation meeting opportunity, right? If you didn't have the network of doctors already, if you didn't have the infrastructure and the quality of product that you knew was solid, right? The whole thing would have foiled. But because the quality was there, and to walk in Yeah, who knows how that meeting would have gone had that reseller not been ill
But if
and
he
waiting
if
for
he
his
had been
doctor.
in a grunchy, grouchy mood without having his first cup of coffee, he might have said, "Get the hell out of here."
That's unbelievable. So,
Well, and how things snowball, Jeff.
yeah,
I don't
exactly.
know
So
if
that's
you
what
know
we go
this,
next. Yep.
but
a couple of years ago, I helped launch the teledentists.
I didn't know that.
So as telemedicine found its way into mental health, into radiology, into other kinds of things, a couple of entrepreneurial dentists in Kansas said, why can't we do this with dentistry? Because there are a lot of people who can't, first of all, who don't see a dentist regularly. I think the answer is only about 28% of the US population even knows a dentist. With a pandemic, they probably haven't had an exam in 2 or 3 years. And so they have problems. And there's so much of oral health is tied to the overall body health that without good oral health, you can exacerbate the overall the way the body reacts to things. And so we created a concept where there is a dentist on call 24/7. In some cases, the doctor, he's not seeing you. Like all doctors, they're trained to ask the right battery of questions, and if they ask enough questions, they'll pretty much have a hypothesis of what the problem is. And in addition, they built a network, a relationship with dentists in every state and every city, so that they could make an appointment for you to see a dentist tomorrow at 12 noon. We've asked those dentists to kind of hold out that 12 noon time slot, and you can then see that dentist tomorrow. So if I can't fix, if the dentist on call can't fix your problem, and sometimes the problems are simple, it's something stuck or whatever, or if it's determined it's an abscess and you really need to see somebody, well, then I've got a dentist who will see you tomorrow at 12 noon. And that's gaining traction. That's about a 3-year-old company right now. And
what's it called?
The teledentists.
Okay. Great value props in the name.
Right.
So you have, just Gary, your background is expansive and amazing, and I love hearing the stories from your such a varied career. How did you find yourself coming to Asheville?
It was road biking that first got Asheville on my radar screen. I was an avid road biker. I would always ride at least one century to raise money for charity.
Cool.
And many years
century, for those who don't know, is a 100-mile race.
Right. And I had signed up for one in Asheville.
And you never got off the bike. You said, I'm staying right here.
Well, no. And then, for some reason, it was either work or an injury, I didn't make the trip.
Oh.
So now Asheville's in the back of my mind, and then you start reading articles. Maybe it's a place to kind of spend the latter part of your years and whatnot. And good friends of ours in Dallas who grew up in Charlotte said, let's go for a weekend in Asheville. So in 2019, wife and I came here. We spent 4 days, really liked it. We said, this could be the place, but why don't we test market it? And let's rent for the summer of 2020. So
what timing?
So we rented a VBRO for 2020 and spent the summer here for 3 months, and actually wound up buying a place in 2020 and moved here in 2021.
Awesome. Well, we are lucky to have you. So you're still working. Like, what keeps you busy?
Well, I was very busy up until about 3 months ago. I was helping build another company out of Dallas called Wise Earth that was developing an organic pesticide. There isn't one now, to kill freshwater snails. And the reason you want to kill freshwater snails is twofold. One is snails spread a horrible disease in Africa and then in Asia called schistosomiasis. It kills about 200 to 250,000 people a year, and it's passed in the water. And the other reason you want to kill snails is because snails eat about 21% of all the world's rice crop. They're born and bred in the rice paddies. They eat the young shoots. And so right now, the farmer has no choice but to use a non-organic product and which are increasingly being banned by the country government.
Right.
So I led the whole supply chain through my world contacts. Working internationally, you build a large litany of names. And the soapberry bush, which grows only in Ethiopia, has been tried in 16 other countries to grow it successfully, and failed every time. The soapberry bush is the catalyst for the killing of the snails. The berry, if ground, the saponins in the berry are what is the company had learned how to extract. And I went several trips to Ethiopia, and we secured farmland. We were planning to grow. And then in 2020, a civil war erupted in Ethiopia. And the government took control of all inbound and outbound communication. So we don't know who's alive or who's dead of people we were working with.
Oh my gosh!
And there was a whole greenhouse where we were germinating the product, and then it was going to be shipped to Vietnam and ground into the powder, which was then going to be distributed in Africa to the farmer. And unfortunately, Civil War has put everything. It's killed the whole concept. I mean, it's still there. It's still a viable business, but the investors walked. They were, it was about $10 million invested up to that point in the concept.
Well, I have a home remedy for snails and slugs in my garden. I don't have a soapberry bush. I do. I take a Tupperware and I cut holes in it.
Yeah. And
I put beer on the bottom, and the snails and slugs are drawn to the beer. They stay on the bottom, and they toss it out later. I don't think you can do that on an industrial level, but maybe there's like skunk beer, like beer that's spoiled in Asheville. You could ship that to farmers to do little beer trenches.
You got to spread it into the rice paddy. So you got to see.
Yeah, a little trench of beer around the paddy. So you're always open, like you're always looking for interesting problems to solve.
Things. I love things. I probably have one more in me.
All right. I'll keep that in mind. I was just pitching our last guest a new marketplace app. I might hit you up for that one. All right, here's one for you. This is a freebie for the show. Okay, totally acceptable for adults to climb rocks and go to the gym. It's rock climbing gym. But people love climbing trees. For some reason, not as acceptable for an adult to be climbing trees. What do you think about a tree climbing gym?
So you are putting the building around an existing forest, or are you basically creating artificial trees?
I think you do the artificial tree. Artificial tree with like vines, like zip lines, like get around and navigate.
Why wouldn't it work? Of course.
I don't know. There's a stigma around adults climbing trees. Oh, you climb a rock. That's a cool, hip, attractive thing to do. Being a tree climber is not. I don't think so. Well, arborists could train.
Maybe you should make it more challenging in that you have to build the tree house on the limb that you're climbing.
This is why you're the pro, Gary.
Right.
Hey, so we got two final questions for you. I ask one, and then Jay Walker asks one. Mine is a new game we're playing this season called Seed, Shop, or Shutter. We ask you, would you seed invest in this trend or business? Shop, are you buying it today? Is this something you're into right now? Or shutter, you're closing it down, no good. It's meant to be a predicament. It's meant to be constraining and challenging. So seed, shop, or shutter, and we try to match the presentation of options to our guest's background and industry. So if you're seed, shop, or shutter, the trend of televet med, which my wife is a veterinarian and does, reworked retro games like Giant Operation or Giant Hungry Hippos, or one more Transformers movie. What are you investing for the long term? What are you buying today, and what are you shutting down?
Tell me the middle one again.
Reworked retro games. So the trend of taking Operation and making it life size, for example.
Well, televet to me is a very viable opportunity, given the quality of video transmission phones today.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason why, not being a medical practitioner, I'm assuming that they can be as as helpful as for patient care. Making life-size versions of games is probably Shudder,
Okay, not into it. Okay.
because I think it relies too much on the existing brand imagery established by that game back when. And if
this is a great answer, by the way. I was expecting like stupid idea, Jeff. Shut up. But this is such an eloquent and smart response to a life-size operation.
If I didn't like it then, I'm certainly not going to like it now.
Yeah.
And one more Transformers movie. Well, we've done 7 of them. They've done 7 of them. I saw the box office numbers. So you're going to like this, Jeff.
Oh,
the
yeah.
Box office numbers are
global box office, of course.
Right. Global box office numbers are 48 billion.
Get out of here. Have you seen all of them? Do you watch them?
No, I've not seen all of them. Number 1 and number 2 to me were the best.
Okay.
Michael Bay was the director. He's an action guy.
Really pushed it visually.
Shia LaBeouf and Michelle Fox.
Yeah, great team.
We're good, and then but they still work, and people still keep going on it. So, but there's probably another one. They did 7. Why wouldn't they do 8? Until it fails the box office, I think you keep doing it. Right?
So you're gonna. Sorry, so I'm a little confused. Are you seeding or shopping the Transformers? I guess that's seed. That's long term. There will be another one at some point. So your answers are: you're shopping Televet Med. You think that's good right now. We're shuttering the giant retro games, and we are seeding one more Transformers movie.
Right.
Fantastic. Thank you, Gary. All right. As per tradition on the show, last question goes to Jay Walker.
Hard one, though.
Of course. Yes. Well, speaking of seeding and shopping and investing, all of this stuff, what new markets or new technologies have really caught your eye? You have your finger on the pulse with so much and have had so many successful ventures. What's catching your eye right now?
I'm really watching evolution of social media and how influential it's become, and how cautious lawmakers and parents are becoming. Is TikTok going to go bye-bye? Is that stronger than others? Is somebody going to have a new one? And as we think about social media and how it's influenced, and unfortunately read about so many deaths that are the result of battering on social media, that people just decide to take their own life, and now we look at AI and we see NVIDIA believes that AI is the future, that's what's going to do so much of us. We're gonna have jobs done, thinking done for us by artificial intelligence, and somehow it's all going to be good for the world. And I'm not sure I'm not in that camp yet.
Your comments on social media, I think are very reflective of your experience in TV. Like at the point we are at with the public danger, the health risk, the great example is bullying leading to suicide in kids, right? Like how is there not more regulation coming to social media like we saw with TV? So it's kind of a downer one to end the podcast on. I think it's very important, and you add an incredible perspective, which is why I'm so glad you're here, Gary. You have so much wonderful experience and perspective. You make our ecosystem so much richer by being in it, by mentoring, by meeting with our companies, speaking at our conference next week. So I'm so thankful for your time today, and so thankful you're here. And I'll end it with saying thank you for talking ship with us today.
Glad to be here, guys. This was fun.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Jay. We'll see you all soon.